Hi, welcome to the gym. Today's topic is taking control of my future by letting go of my past. It's a little bit heavy and may take more than one run through to really absorb and understand the things that are important here, but don't give up on it. It's a good topic if you've ever been through any trauma. So let's start with adverse childhood experiences. Some of us have had trauma in our childhoods, and they could fall into the category of abuse, neglect, or household dysfunction. Abuse, physical, emotional, or sexual. Neglect could be physical or it could be emotional. In household dysfunction, there could be mental illness with a family member, incarcerated relatives. There could be substance abuse by the parents or siblings. Mother could have been treated violently and you witnessed it as a child, or there could be a divorce. And what they've found through research is that if you have 4 or more of these, you become at risk for things like addiction or depression or anxiety. People with 5 or more on their score are 7 to 10 times more likely to become substance abusers. This correlates with us because we tend to turn to food as our addiction with these kinds of experiences in childhood because food didn't judge us. It was available and we tended to attach to that. It was much safer. So that's important if you have 4 or more of these traumas in your childhood to think about working on those traumas if you haven't done that already. I'm going to just read this because it's from an article about addiction, and I think it's absolutely vital that we understand this on our journey. Trauma and addiction need to be treated as co-occurring and interrelated. Without helping individuals cope with their terror, shame, fear, and isolation, there's no upside to sobriety. Those who are trauma victims and use drugs or alcohol, or we could say food, do so not because it's fun or because it makes them happy. They use substances to find short-lived solace from an internal experience that is unbearable. If we don't work through the trauma, we can't take away the food and expect to feel happy. And we're looking at childhood experiences in this particular study, but it could be trauma as an adult as well. For us to take control of our present and our future, we need to look at what we can do. As children, there wasn't a lot we could do. We needed our parents, or we needed our home, we needed whatever stability we could get from there. But as adults, we can take control of our present and our future. So realize that because of the past, sometimes our child selves come out and make decisions. I'll give you an example. I have a client who is absolutely terrified to be around her father-in-law because he reminds her of her brother who was abusive to her as he was growing up. Her father-in-law, she will tell you, is one of the sweetest, kindest, gentlest men in the world. But there's something about his appearance that reminds her of her brother. And as we started talking about this, because you can imagine it would not be a good thing to not like your father-in-law, especially if he's kind, gentle, and everything she says he is. As we started talking about it, we talked about how old she felt when she was around her father-in-law, and she said a certain age, and I asked her what happened at that age, and that was when her brother started to abuse her. And what she realized is that her adult self liked her father-in-law just fine and felt confident around him, but that little child self was sort of hijacking her when that part of her saw her father-in-law. I know that sounds a little weird, but we all have parts of us that get stuck, and there's another video about that I will link to this one. So look for that in the notes, because we can get stuck there and it sort of takes over unknowingly. It feels very illogical, and it is. And yet that's what happens. So as she comforted her little 7-year-old self, and she assured her that the adult, which was herself, the adult her, would take care of the father-in-law, protect her, and her 7-year-old could go and play and not worry about her safety because her father-in-law was not her brother. Things started to ease up, and she started to feel less anxious, and she started to really get to know her father-in-law better and really liked him. And the funny thing happened, that 7-year-old part seemed to kind of dissipate and disappear as the adult self had more positive interactions with her father-in-law, until when we went to talk to her one day, she wasn't there because she'd integrated into the adult. So our adult self needs to give our younger self the protection they need and didn't get in the past by making decisions in the present and letting the younger self go play, just like my client did. We also need to look at sadness, anger, and resentment caused by past situations. and practice forgiveness of self, others, and God. And that's probably the hardest thing sometimes to do, especially if we don't get a formal apology. My client never got an apology. Brother never acknowledged it. He denied it when he was confronted. So she wasn't going to ever get that apology. But she realized that if she didn't forgive him, she was carrying around the burden of the abuse when really it belonged to him and it was his to carry around and not hers. We've probably all heard the saying that not forgiving someone is like drinking poison and expecting them to die from it. We kind of poison our own souls, and we're carrying around that guilt and shame that another person imposed on us, and it really does belong to them. But that's sad. It's very hard to do, and it seems so unfair. So we want to look at when it's time to let go. So inability to stop thinking about the event, feelings of regret or remorse about it, fear or avoidance, a tense relationship when you're around them, feeling invisible or inadequate, and inability to let go of anger. And there's other ones too, but you get the flavor of the idea that, yeah, it's time to take my life back because they're living rent-free in my head. Forgiveness means different things to different people, but in general, it involves an intentional decision to let go of resentment and anger. And the underline here is intentional decision. You're not doing it because anybody tells you to. You're not doing it because you're expected to. And you're not being asked to forget what happened, but you're intentionally giving away the resentment and anger that was caused by whatever happened. And you're gaining good health from it. This article by Karen Schwartz says there's an enormous physical burden to being hurt and disappointed. Chronic anger puts you in a fight or flight mode, which results in a lot of changes in heart rate, blood pressure, and immune response. Those changes increase the risk of depression, heart disease, and diabetes, among other conditions. Forgiveness calms stress levels, leading to improved health. So doing it for overall health as well as mental health is a really good reason. So here's some suggestions about how to think about it. First, recognize the value of forgiveness. And sometimes this is a process, and that's okay. Take as long as you need to do that, but at least put it in the front of your mind. Identify what needs healing and who you want to forgive. Or we could say who you need to forgive. Maybe you don't want to forgive, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Choose to forgive the person who's offended you. It's not about their deserving to be forgiven or changing. It's giving the burden you've been carrying back to them. They're the ones that created it. They're the ones that deserve it. Acknowledge your emotions about the harm done to you. Recognize how those emotions affect you now and work to release them. And depending on the rules in your family growing up, it was never okay to have emotions, or it was never okay to express them, or you had to protect certain family members from responsibility. And so if they hurt you, you couldn't say, that really hurt. You had to protect them from that knowledge. Release the control and power that the offending person and situation have had in your life. Change your expectations. And that resentment list that we looked at, that's all about control and power in your mind. They had a lot of power and control because they took a lot of space between your ears. So choose to release it and change your expectations. Change the expectation that you'll get the I'm sorry. Change the expectation that they will ever change. Look at your expectations more realistically. Then cultivate gratitude and look for ways life is sweet and good and is working out for you. And if you can't do it on your own, please join a support group or see a counselor or find a support person who has gotten really good at this. One of the steps in a 12-step program is forgiveness. So you may want to go to an Al-Anon or an OA group or a codependency addicts group and work the steps, because this is one of them, and those are great programs. So for your reflection, this is a little bit more involved and should take a little while to do. Don't knock it out in one day. Think about it and ponder about it. So create a letting go plan, a forgiveness plan, if you want to call it that. Write down who offended you and do it one person at a time. Don't do it as a group, but who offended you. And then what, if any, was your part in the offense? Sometimes we become complicit. This is overtly, this isn't without realizing it. because if you didn't realize it, you don't have any responsibility for it. What thoughts or feelings need healing in you because of the offense? That's a big one. Intentionally choose to give the emotional and physical results of the offense back to the offender. They're not yours to carry. This can be done in a physical way through a phone call, email, letter, face-to-face text, that kind of thing where you're actually talking real time to them. Or it can be done by writing a letter to the person. Sometimes the person is not safe to see. Sometimes the person is no longer alive. Sometimes talking to that person would create more havoc and chaos than it would help. And so you don't have to actually talk to them. And then you wouldn't give the letter to them. This would be a letter that you would write to get your emotions and thoughts and feelings out. And then write yourself a response from that person, the things that you would like to hear from them if they were healthy enough to give you feedback. And lastly, ponder if there's anything else you need to do regarding the offender. If there is, do it. If there's not, let go by forgiving that person and yourself if needed, but no longer carry that burden. It was never yours in the first place to carry. So this is a big workout. This is a big, important part of your recovery. And this is a place where you have almost 100% control over how effective it is. It's not something you can do overnight. You can't snap your fingers and have it be done. It would be nice, but you can't. It took a while to get here. You've kept the feelings for a while, and it will take a while to release them, but it won't take as long to release them as you've carried them if you continue to work on this plan. So best wishes and good luck with that one. I know you can make it. As well as that, notice every day, how strong do I believe I can be successful? How motivated am I to be successful? And if they're not 6 or above on a scale of 1 to 10, go to the free tips for success and watch the motivation and belief videos again, or remember what they say and work on that. That's really important. You can't do any of this other work if you're not motivated or believe that it will work. And then remember your resources, keep compiling them, keep noticing them, and notice and remember your challenges and factor those into everything you do every day. Good luck to you. You've got this. I have faith and confidence that this will work out for you. Give it your best shot and just keep doing it until you get there. So we'll see you next time at the gym.